Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. My name is Michelle Bakels. I'm a program director at G2I, where I work on community-focused solutions for developer health and preventing and recovering from burnout. And today I'd like to share with you my experience building for nonprofit communities with Vercel and Next.js. And to begin sharing that experience, I'd like to introduce you to the community that I've been working with for the last several months, and that is 1909. 1909 is a community in West Palm Beach that is for creators, by creators, dedicated to the holistic growth of entrepreneurs, creatives, freelancers, offering workspace programs, resources, and events for the like-minded who give a damn about building a better tomorrow. And if that sounds like a very ambitious statement, it is. However, I promise you it has all of the impact and punch behind it. The 1909 is one of the most incredible communities that I've ever seen, let alone had the fortune of being a part of. And what makes it so great is, of course, the amazing people who are the members of 1909. So to tell you a little bit about who we are content creators, marketers, bakers, gardeners, economists, activists, musicians, inventors, yogis. The members of the 1909 represent a very diverse array of skill sets and talents. And I think on a higher level, you could really describe the members of 1909 as creators, freelancers, startup founders, entrepreneurs, and first employees. So there is a lot of experiences that we share with each other. We help each other through the struggles and the hard times. However, we also are there for each other for the wins and successes that we can celebrate together. And so it's really a great community. And if you have ever been a startup founder or an entrepreneur or been close to someone who has, then you'll know that there are some pretty big struggles in that journey. And one of them, I think, is when you're starting early on, you have to wear 10,000 hats because it's typically just you or you and a couple of people. And so if you're like Enuela here in the bottom photo, you may be really passionate about teaching kids how to grow their own food at home and educating them on nutrition. However, you'll find yourself also doing the bookkeeping and the social media posts and advertising and a million other things that you may not be necessarily very good at. And so one of the things that we want at the 1909 for our members is the ability to stop doing the things we're not good at so that we can focus on the things that we are good at. And we already have at the 1909 this culture of giving towards each other without expecting anything in return and the mindset of going further together. So with that known and with that already in practice, the team at 1909 got together and came up with a plan to create a platform to facilitate, innovate, and incentivize on this relationship that our community already has amongst each other. And so we got together for a collab day, which is essentially kind of like a startup hackathon in a sense, where we fleshed out the idea for the exchange, which is a platform that has a feel of a task board crossed with Venmo. And it would be where our members could post things that they needed help with, and someone could basically pick that task up in exchange for a couple of tokens, which they would then be able to use again on the marketplace to get something done for them that they need help with. So it was a really cool idea around gamifying and incentivizing something that already occurs, and just making it a little bit more robust for our members. We also had the opportunity here to collect data around the activities of our community, which was really important as a nonprofit community. There is quite a bit of data that we can collect. However, insight into the everyday as a member of 1909 can really help with grant proposals and when you're speaking with donors. So for example, imagine being able to say in Q1 of 2022, our members exchanged $40,000 worth of services amongst each other in support of growing entrepreneurs and small businesses in West Palm Beach, Florida. So that's a pretty powerful statement to stand on and to be able to speak to when you are running a nonprofit community. So there was a lot of incentive to put this platform up. So we came up with a game plan to find developers to work on the project, design and build the MVP, and then iterate as we received feedback. And this is all pretty straightforward, typical for developing a project. And so we began on the first iteration where we built a simple transaction application with a React front end, Node back end. We invited any developer to work on it if they wanted to. It was really an open invitation. And we used the simplest tools and languages that we felt that anyone could work with. They would either likely already know it or they could easily pick it up. So, despite like some of our best intentions here and coming up with what we thought was a pretty straightforward, simple plan, there were some unexpected bumps, specifically with doing extra work on the side or volunteer work outside of your normal 40-hour work week. So what we learned is that the company MVP is very different from the community MVP. So if we were building this in a company, it would actually probably be considered pretty trim. However, for side work, we really needed to narrow it down even more. We created too much to maintain outside of the most critical functionality. The most critical functionality was the actual transactions. However, we did end up wasting quite a bit of time trying to get this profile image uploader to work that we ended up scrapping. So things like that didn't even contribute to the actual functionality of the transactions, we had to really pare down. Everyone's spare time is different, so we needed to ensure that we could async everything, if not as much as possible. And then probably one of our biggest pain points was building and deploying created too many unexpected blockers, especially when we were onboarding our developers. So this is just a common wall that we would hit when we were bringing in developers or setting people up, was that the platform that we were using was just a little complicated, especially if you didn't have experience with it. So our takeaway here was that every process that left the potential for significant time loss risked A, completely losing a developer or volunteer for the project, or B, delivering on the project at all. So since time is so valuable with volunteer and side work, we really didn't have hours to waste on anything, because that a couple hours wasted can put delivery back a week or two when we were talking about doing things on the side. So we went back to the drawing board and we came up with a new iteration that was way pared down called Skillshare, which we're still working on the name. But in any case, we designed it like it was an MVP for a hackathon. So what can you deliver in 24 hours that works? And 24 hours of volunteer time is actually quite a bit of time. So we also wanted to make sure that we got strong commitments from a small group of self-starting developers. So it was, before where we would ask, like, well, would you like to work on this? Yes. Now it was, okay, what time exactly do you have to spend? What do you intend to take ownership of? When do you think you could deliver this? It was a much more explicit conversation. So I take that on myself. The open door will be great to revisit again once we have the MVP done. However, in the beginning, when we're just trying to get it out there, we have to close that circle. Async everything as much as possible, from communication to development to planning, and of course prioritize removing processes and the potential for time loss. So we needed to recognize where we were losing time. Sometimes that's on code and it's inevitable, and you just have bugs and you have issues, and it's part of being a developer. However, there were some processes, especially in our deployments and builds, that we kept hitting issues with, and that was a moment of, okay, let's reassess this and figure out what we need to do to not make this such a problem anymore. So we had another collab day, and we decided to try and execute on this new game plan that we made. And for this collab, I kind of just woke up in the morning and decided to start working on it, and made a plan to essentially set up the foundations and the structures for our new apps, because it was really a whole app ecosystem that we were restructuring. Skillshare was a part of it. And I wanted to set up the builds and deployments for these apps as well. And so since we were starting from scratch again, more or less, I wanted to take a look at Vercel and Next, because I've heard so many good things about Vercel and what they offer. And so I allocated about a half of a day to learning Vercel, or at least starting to, and was very pleasantly surprised that I only needed about 45 minutes. The tools were unbelievably simple to set up and use. And as soon as I deployed our first project, I realized that this was the answer to one of our greatest pain points and time wasters, which was our builds and deployments. So that was really great. I could simply add other developers to our team. We didn't need to be installing anything and debugging console log statements. It was very, very straightforward. And with Next, it eliminated our need for two of the backend repositories that we were planning on setting up and using for these apps. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed using Vercel and learning it, and being able to integrate it into our work with this nonprofit community. And I think just the whole process was just so unbelievably simple. I still get really like all of those same feelings of like happiness and excitement and relief when I think back on that day and that moment where I was like, wow, this really is so easy. And it's funny because I tell people the thing that took me the longest was looking for the rest of the instructions, because when I was first using it, because of my experiences, were just in complete disbelief that everything I needed was in one UI. And so I actually started searching around the internet for the rest of the instructions on how to deploy on Vercel. And of course, it was really as straightforward as it seemed. And so at the end of the day, what I was actually able to deliver was the foundation for these apps, the builds and deployments for all of them. I was also able to get our developers onboarded and then spend the rest of my afternoon actually writing the code, which is the thing that we really care about, and the part of these projects that we really want to do is delivering the value and the features for our community. And I was able to build two front-end apps completely, one of them being the Skillshare, and get those deployed so that moving forward, we just start working on the services. So really exciting day, and was really great to share with the team, and they were all really excited too. So comparing our previous experience to using Vercel, again, our last platform wasn't really even too terrible. A lot of it was just expected in the developer experience. However, once you use Vercel, the bar gets raised really quickly. So with the previous platform, it required a CLI install, and that's fine. That's really common. However, the error messages were really difficult to decipher, even for experienced developers. If you weren't familiar with what those error messages were really trying to tell you, you could be debugging that for a while. No automatic builds and deployments by default, which is nothing I ever expected in my life. However, once you have a taste of that life, then you can't go back. We had longer builds and deployments, again, something that I just accepted as par for the course. And at times, the documentation was really confusing and differed a lot from our actual experience with trying to follow that documentation. So again, this is, something that I really would have always considered part of the developer experience. However, switching to Vercel, where we could connect a repo, create a team, build and deploy an app in one UI in about 5 minutes, really changes the game. We also had automatic builds and deployments by default, which it's just like a dream to me. The UIs don't require documentation, which is fantastic. The page works the way that you expect it to. And the documentation doesn't require Google and Stack Overflow. So for Vercel to be the creators of the product and to be the best source of information on how to use that product is a little bit more rare than I think we like to admit when we're using software products in our programs. So yeah, I was overall very impressed with the developer experience, completely understand what all of the hype is about around using Vercel and Next, and was really happy to make the decision to move forward with using it in our project. So where are we now and where are we going? We have a core team of developers, which is awesome. We're moving forward with our new apps built with React and Next and Vercel, and we're going to begin testing with our community soon. We don't have an exact date yet. However, our roadmap to testing is pretty short at this point, so we're getting really excited. And I also wanted to give a quick shout out to the dev team that's been working on this. Rue and Becca, thank you so much for picking up the torch and running with this project. Andres, the original 1909 developer and the creator of the blueprint for gamification software at the 1909. It's been awesome to work with you on these projects. And then, of course, Ryan, who's really kind of the visionary, innovator, pusher of the project, very dedicated to this idea of creating the skill trading platform for the members of the 1909. And it's been incredible working with you. And of course, there's a ton of people to mention that aren't listed here. It's really a community effort to put this out, but really wanted to make a special thank you to the team that I work with and talk to about this on a day-to-day. So with that said, thank you so much to the dev team that I get to work with. Thank you so much to Vercel and the team there for creating amazing developer tools and experiences. It's again just a game changer for us, for the industry. The bar has been raised. You set a new standard. So we are really excited to continue working with your tooling and seeing what we can do. And of course, thank you everyone for joining me today for this talk and hearing our story about how we build for nonprofit communities using Vercel and Next.js. Thank you.